Society is doomed. The economy is cooked. So, as we've explained before, inflation is not going anywhere. There's a lot of people who are in the comments saying that, the prices can go back down, just like gas. Gas can go back down. So the cost of food can go back down. The cost of electronics can go back down. The cost of rent can go back down. We can see a return of the days when rent was $1,000 a month instead of 2,500 or $3,000 a month. We can go back to better times. This is what these people are saying. Let me make it very clear. It's not going to happen. There are people who've pointed out, and this is why I said the manosphere is transforming, because it's going to become a place where we move away from discussing women on a regular basis and relationships, because men have found solutions for that. They're walking away. The simp economy is moving overseas. The discussion is moving away from discussing relationships and women and these types of things in the manosphere. The conversation is now shifting. We are now beginning to move towards a maturing manosphere, and that's where things are going to change massively. I'm looking at a channel called Clever Value Tax. It's a large channel on YouTube. I'm going to link them in the description of the video. The thing is, this is what I've learned. I learn a lot from you guys. I have an undergrad in business, but I learn a lot from you guys, and you guys have pointed out that the actual debt the United States has is well over 200 trillion. Okay, they say 34 trillion in the United States, but we actually have over 200 trillion overseas. Because if they kept all of that debt in the United States, then everything would just collapse and fall apart. The United States cannot keep up with its interest payments on that $34 trillion. It cannot keep up with the interest payments. It cannot keep up with Social Security. It cannot keep up with pensions. The U.S. cannot pay its debts. It can't afford it. And the boomers are basically saying that, well, the main issue is just covering the interest cost. It's not like we're ever going to go back to a point where we have a zero balance sheet, where there's no national debt. So their concept is that we will continue to carry debt forever. We will never return to a place where we've completely paid off our national debt and we don't owe anyone money. In fact, we're just going to keep on raising the balance. But for us to do that, we need inflation, because by inflation continuously going up, that will actually allow the United States to pay its debt, because the value of that debt is going to decrease. This is insane stuff. Insane stuff. The fact of the matter is that we are deliberately not taught how money actually works. But the crazy thing is there are people who know. There are people who know how it actually works. And if one person doesn't have everything, there are people that have bits and pieces. And the manosphere is pulling that all together. So you're going to see more people like Clear Value entering into the manosphere, becoming a key part of the manosphere as we begin to shift away from discussing relationships and marriage and dating all the time to discussing what's happening in our society, what's happening in our world, focusing on making money, creating actual value, actually moving away from paper money, because you're going to see it's not really worth anything. The value of fiat currency, that's paper money, always goes back to zero, because they just never stop printing it. And, again, what's something that you guys have pointed out? It's always fun and games when you're when you're using other people's money until it runs out. Let's go ahead and jump into this video from Clear Value Tax, because he basically breaks this down, and his video is titled "Inflation Alert: The U.S. National Debt Cannot Be Repaid." All right.
So I really have to share this with you. I think it's very important that you understand this. Inflation must continue because the government needs it to continue. They don't see another way out. A lot of people already know this. If you do, please help me spread the word, because you know what's going on. If you don't know, then I'm going to explain this to you, and this is going to be crystal clear after I show you. So the US federal government is in debt, $34 trillion. And let's just have an honest conversation here. The government has no chance of paying that money back. I'm just being realistic. Do you realistically believe that the politicians are going to learn how to balance the budgets, and that with the surplus money that they have every year, they're going to use that money to pay down the national debts? That sounds like a fairy tale. But it's not going to happen. In reality, every year the government is going deeper into debt. So look at this year. This year, the government's going to collect about $5 trillion in taxes. So you can think of that as their income. And they're going to spend about $7 trillion. So they have $5 trillion coming in. They're going to spend $7 trillion. That's a $2 trillion deficit. Therefore, they have to borrow that $2 trillion to make up the difference. And our national debt will go from $34 trillion to $36 trillion. So this overspending continues every single year. So when you hear presidents say that they cut the deficit by $1 trillion, that means that instead of overspending by $3 trillion, they overspent by just $2 trillion this year. So just think about this logically. How is the government going to pay back their debt when they spend more money than they make every single year? Math doesn't work out like that. So their best solution is inflation. So I want to show you how this works. So inflation is going to make it easier for you to pay back your debts. So I'll explain it and think about it like this. If you have cash and you stick it under your mattress and you leave it there for 10 years, then you know what's going to happen. Your cash is going to become less valuable. The purchasing power is going to go down because of inflation. Now it's going to be the same concept with your debts. Your debt becomes less valuable too. In an inflationary environment, it will become easier to pay back your debts. So I want to give you an exaggerated example to demonstrate. So let's just say that you borrow $400,000 to buy a home right now. Let's just say that you get a 30-year fixed mortgage, okay? And let's say that all of a sudden we have crazy hyperinflation. We're talking about Zimbabwe style or Venezuelan style, right? So hyperinflation, the price of gasoline goes to $600 a gallon. A Happy Meal at McDonald's costs $1,200 now. And now an average home costs $100 million. So the cost of everything goes up like crazy. However, your income is going to go up like crazy too. It's probably not going to keep up with your expenses, but your income will skyrocket. So under these conditions, if you were making, let's just say $70,000 a year, now you're going to be making $10 million a year. In this inflationary environment, just think about it. Now it's going to be super easy for you to pay back your $400,000 mortgage. Because now you're making $10 million a year. So a $400,000 debt is nothing. So this is an extreme example to illustrate the point. So now I want to give you a realistic example so that you can witness it for yourself. So back in the year 2000, so 24 years ago, the median price of a home in the US was $119,600. So let's just call it $120K. But today, because of inflation, the median home has risen to $400,000 approximately. Now, I want to show you the math. Let's say that you bought a home in the year 2000, and remember, this is the median priced home for $120,000. Let's say that you put a 10% down payment, which is average, and you get a 30-year mortgage with a 7% interest rate. Your monthly mortgage payment is $719 a month. So imagine that you bought your home 24 years ago, and you're still making the monthly mortgage payments of $719 a month. If I could pay $719 a month for the median home in the US, I would say that that's cheap. The reason it's cheap is because you're paying back your debts from a long time ago with today's inflated dollars. So it's going to be the same concept with the US government and their debt situation. The US government is in debt $34 trillion. So let's pretend that the US government does not go any further into debt and it stays at $34 trillion. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, inflation will make it easier to pay back that $34 trillion. So the government needs inflation to manage the whole debt situation, their debt problem. And I just want to tell you that this country cannot afford deflation. Just think about it. So deflation is when prices go down. If prices go down, then it's the opposite. It's going to be harder to pay back your debts. So let me explain it to you like this. Imagine that you come out of college with $150,000 of student loans. Let's say that you're making $100,000 a year. So you have a lot of debt, but it's manageable because, that's a good income. But if your income falls from $100,000 a year to, let's just say, 30,000, then you're going to be in deep trouble because it'll be harder for you to keep up with your student loan payments if you get a pay cut. It's going to be the same thing with the US government and their situation. If there's deflation, then prices go down all across the board. That means that their tax collections, their revenue, will go down as well. So it would be harder for the government to pay their debts in a deflationary environment. If the government owes $34 trillion and their tax collections fall from $5 trillion to $3 trillion, then it's going to be harder for them to pay off the $34 trillion. Well, I would say that, honestly, it's a moot point because, as I told you, and as you know, the government spends more money every year than they have coming in. So I guess it's a moot point. But anyways, this is why the government wants inflation. So it's easier for them to manage their debts and keep this charade ongoing. It's just ridiculous how we all know what's going on, but we still all play along. Okay, because what are the consequences? The consequences are, if we stop playing along, then the US government's going to default on their debt obligations. If that happens, it's going to be chaos because, well, if they can't pay their bills, they can't pay their debts, then the dollar would lose reserve currency status. And if that happens, then everything's going to go to crap. Okay, so the government and the Federal Reserve claim that they want inflation to be at 2%. That's their targets. But they're having a hard time getting it to 2% because they keep on printing money and just spending it recklessly. The politicians, they simply cannot help themselves. They have donors that they have to give favors to. They have rich friends and family to support, and they want to make money for themselves. You can call it greed, you can call it corruption, you can call it mismanagement, whatever you want to call it, but it's ruining our country. Just a simple fact that the budget cannot be balanced. So I'm telling you that this is going to end badly, and I don't think that that's a far-fetched conclusion. It's just a matter of timing. But I guarantee you that, this is going to lead to something bad, let's just say a collapse. But I guarantee you that it's not going to happen this year, it's not going to happen next year. But it's not going to be in the far distant future either. So when is this collapse going to happen? Obviously, nobody knows for sure. MIT is saying that the collapse will happen in 2040. I think that the Social Security crisis is going to be a big test for this country. Social Security is on track to go insolvent in the year 2033. That's according to the Social Security Administration. I'm sure that situation is going to cause a lot of chaos, considering that 70 million Americans receive Social Security payments. And you have to realize that the situation is already at dangerous levels. Look at this red flag. This year in 2024, our government will spend more on interest payments than on national defense. That's because of the mountain of debt that we have. So I hope this educates you on the situation of inflation and what is going on.
Now, guys, we all know that when you just keep printing money, and printing money, the value of the money continues to decline. And eventually people stop accepting that money and they say, we're going to move to a new currency. We're not going to take this anymore. There are gold standard currencies now beginning to emerge that are backed by gold. And these currencies are significant. If you have a gold standard currency that is backed by gold that you can trust, what people will begin doing is they will begin ditching the United States dollar and converting their money over to a currency that is backed by gold. Because they know what's going on. They know that their money is going to continue to rapidly lose value. But when inflation occurs, what continues to maintain its value? Gold. So they're going to put their money into other currencies that retain their value, that are backed by gold. They're also going to buy gold. And you know what they're also going to do? They're going to buy cryptocurrency. They're not going to stop buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital gold. You cannot make any more of it. And the way Bitcoin works is that it's stored on a digital ledger. So every transaction ever made is on a digital ledger. And everyone in the world can have a copy of that ledger. Think about that, how significant that is. Everyone in the world can have a copy of that digital ledger, and it is automatically checked by the software to ensure that every transaction is valid. This is the power of cryptocurrency. Right now, Bitcoin is, last I checked, was something like $65,000 a coin. This is not a game. I have my cryptocurrency courses, which will be up for you guys soon. You'll be able to check them out. For those of you that need to learn about crypto and get into crypto, this is one of the best times to jump into crypto and to know what coins. Bitcoin, most of you will never own a single Bitcoin, but there are many other coins that you can jump into, okay, that we often call crap coins, but there are other coins that are not crap coins, not even straight crap coins. They are very, very valuable coins. And right now, Ethereum is over $3,000 coin. Just a few years ago, it was $300, $200 for one Ethereum. So there's a lot of value out there. And I'm going to teach you which coins you're going to want to invest in, which coins you're going to want to hodl. That's a term from the cryptocurrency community, hodl. It means hold, but they say hodl, so they spell it a little bit different. It's a cute term. But I hope you guys begin to understand exactly what's happening. All of this inflation, this is being done deliberately. Oh, we don't know what's happening. The central bank controls our money, so they know exactly what they're doing. If they don't create this inflation, if they don't allow inflation to continue to rise, then they're screwed. The reality is that they're using calculations to allow inflation to keep on going up gradually. Yes. Okay. They realize that Americans are tapped out right now. So they're cooling it down, and they're pumping the brakes a little bit. So we're gonna slow down the rise of inflation a bit. We're not gonna stop it. Okay. And if we see any problems, we're gonna pick it up back. We're gonna make it happen even faster. But we're going to keep it rising because that's the only way that we can actually pay our bills back. And what companies are doing, as you can see, is the wages are not increasing in conjunction to the rise of inflation. So you're not making a ton more than you were making years ago. Maybe a little bit more, but not a lot more. The reality is that, yes, most Gen Zers will never be able to own a home in the United States. We're becoming an economy, a society of renters, which is a big problem in and of itself. That does spell some serious problems for a society, because if we become a society of renters, then eventually that devalues real estate. Because if people are no longer buying homes, then there's no need to build more homes. And if the banks are stuck with properties that they cannot sell, then that will create deflation and a collapse of the real estate market. And if real estate begins to collapse, then their inflation plan, that also puts stagnation into it. Right now, countries around the world know that this is all a sham. They know it is all a sham. Guys, almost 100 years to the date, we saw what happened back in 2020. Almost 100 years to the date, we had a major event occur. When did the Great Depression occur? 1929. What did he say? When did Social Security expected become insolvent? Basically, they run out of money. 2033. But that's what the government, assuming that they will continue to see the same amount of money being paid in taxes for the next 9 to 10 years, roughly the next 9 years. So basically, they're banking on they'll be able to continue pulling in as much tax revenue as they're pulling in now in 9 to 10 years. They are refusing to acknowledge that many of the boomers are just going to retire. and begin pulling Social Security. And when they begin pulling Social Security, it's going to have a massive impact on the economy. So either they're going to have to mess around with the Social Security age and say, okay, well, we need to raise the age of Social Security. That's not a good idea. The boomers would flip out. You're going to raise the age of Social Security, raise the age of Social Security for the kids, for Gen X, for the millennials, for Gen Z, for Gen Alpha. I mean, it's not like they're ever going to see it anyway, but don't mess with our money. Those are our entitlements, and no one wants to mess with them. No one wants to mess with the boomers because they will vote in mass and they will take anyone out of office that screws with their Social Security. So that's the reality. They're between a rock and a hard place. So one way or another, they need to come up with that money. The only other option is to raise taxes. Raise taxes on a generation of people who are already in immense amounts of debt. People are living on debt right now. And the goal is to basically say, well, just keep on living on more debt. Just keep on taking out more debt to pay your bills. And then hopefully in the future, at some point, you'll be able to pay that debt off as you make more money due to hyperinflation. This is Banana Republic stuff. We saw what happened in Zimbabwe. We saw what happened in Venezuela. Venezuela was the third richest country, the third wealthiest country in the Western Hemisphere. Okay? You had many doctors, highly educated people. It was a thriving society, but the people wanted more. You see, when everyone else is doing well, you have those people who are just, they look at others, basically the Gen Zs, and they're like, well, you have a house. I don't have a house. Or you have a nicer house than I have. You have more than I have. Why should I have to go to school and get an education and put in this work? What, you think I'm not a human being too? Look at all the children that I have. You should be the society. There's plenty of money for everyone. So why is it that you don't want to share? So what did they do in Venezuela? They began to regulate various industries. And eventually, the government took over various industries. Then they began regulating prices of everything. And the companies basically said, you know what? We're not going to do business here anymore. So they stopped shipping their products to Venezuela. They stopped selling their products in Venezuela. So the only thing that was left was a black market. And they began refusing to accept the Venezuelan dollar, the Venezuelan bolivar. The value of the money plummeted rapidly. You could only buy things on the black market. Eventually, once Venezuela saw that, like, hey, these companies are gone, they've walked away, we're screwed. They basically removed the price caps and said, okay, you can sell your products for whatever you want to. When they did start selling their products again, instead of a tube of toothpaste costing, $1 or $2, now a tube of toothpaste costs $200 or $300, the equivalent bolivars. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where you would need to carry around bags of money to do business. What did the government do? They responded by saying they're just going to start printing larger bills. Hyperinflation. Eventually, the value of the currency plummeted to the point where it was no longer worth anything. And they began using cryptocurrency to do all of their things. Finally, they switched over to the United States dollar and abandoned the bolivar. And now everything is done using the US dollar in Venezuela, and things have improved a lot as a result of that. The US dollar is the world reserve currency. But as more countries, see the sham for what this is, it's not going to last, guys. It's basically we're taking out more and more debt we can never repay. Eventually, you have to pay back. Eventually, you can't do this forever. And our government is just thinking that they can keep on running it forever and keep doing it forever, and the sham will keep on going on forever until people stop using fiat currency. And that's going to piss a lot of them off. Oh, we need to start cracking down on crypto because this is a very dangerous thing. It's a very dangerous game to play. Or we need to put special taxes on cryptocurrency, and alternative forms of currency. Okay, so you put taxes on it, or you put restrictions on it. They already have a lot of restrictions on crypto in the US. But they're going to put more restrictions. Okay. Well, people are still going to keep using their crypto and holding on to their crypto, but they'll make it more difficult to use in Western society. Okay, so guess what? That definitely means that the US dollar is problematic. So people are going to look for even more alternatives. They're going to start saying, well, I don't want to accept your money. Imagine the government saying that you have to accept our money. You cannot use any other form of money. This is the kind of thing that they tried to do in Venezuela also. You can't use any other kind of money other than our money. What about converting this money to another form of money? No, you can't do that either. What this does is it even further leads to the devaluation of the money, because you need to be able to convert funds rapidly. But if you're telling consumers, and this is what will end up happening, you'll have the U.S. government telling Americans that they can only convert small amounts of their money to other currencies. Like, oh, you can't convert more than $1,000 or more than $500 a day. Like, this is how fraudulent it's going to be. So when they start doing things like that, then people are like, fine, screw that. Now I'm going to go and buy gold. So as soon as I get my money, I'm going to convert it to gold or gold bonds. But I'm going to hold as little of this money as possible because it's very valueless to me. You will see people walking around and just converting, when they need money, they might convert a gold bar because they lose complete trust in the money. The only thing that is propping up the US dollar is our trust and faith in it. That's it. It's not backed by anything. If people don't believe in it and stop using it, that's it. The value of it rapidly declines. It's only as valuable as we believe it is, believe it or not. Guys, don't forget that I have another channel called Angry, where I discuss gaming, anime, geek stuff, nerd stuff, real world stuff, or whatever else interests me. There's a link to it in the description of the video. You can go check it out, enjoy the content. And don't forget, I also have another channel called Men Walking Away. If you're enjoying the content on this channel and you want even more of this content, you can head over to the Men Walking Away channel, where I release daily videos. It's linked in the description of the video. Go check it out, subscribe to the channel, enjoy the content. Society is doomed. Reckless spending, hyperinflation, high consumer debt, personal investment, declines in investments, terrible personal finances, all of these things are further leading the decline. Guys, what do you think regarding all of this? Let me know your thoughts and we'll talk about it in the comments. Like the video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you like the video, share the video. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA and walking away. And cheers.